With growing popularity comes growing criticism, and yes, Crunchyroll is not short of having lots of criticism, but it's typically not from the mainstream media, larger publications really kind of pointing out their shortcomings or, yes, a lot of their controversies that are behind the scenes. And yes, here recently, Bloomberg has actually posted a very scathing article. This article is full of a bunch of insiders, both currently working with Crunchyroll and those that are former workers at Crunchyroll, really pointing out a lot of nasty things that are happening within the company that could spell its failure. We have aspects about the lack of growth of the company itself, mismanagement of the company, mismanagement of properties, and actually causing mangakas themselves to not like what they're doing with their properties and their characters, the failure to target the fans of the anime itself, and yes, even calling anime cartoons for kids. Hulu and Netflix are stepping up in the anime industry, and that's causing a lot of problems for Crunchyroll, and yes, even forcing them to sort of push back on certain properties, including Dandadan, because of the lack of exclusivity. And yes, something that was kind of interesting to me personally is post-Rightstuf having a lot of failures in their sales of products itself. But I thought this was a really fantastic article, and I welcome everybody to go check it out. It's currently on Bloomberg's website. It's called Sony's Crunchyroll Finds Its Early Lead in Anime Under Attack, and it was wrote by Cecilia and Takashi. I welcome you guys to go check out the article. I'm not going to read it all here, but I'm definitely going to go through it and give my thoughts on this stuff, because yes, you do have to take a lot of this with a grain of salt. This is insiders. This is, trust me, bro, this is unnamed people that used to work for the company in a lot of cases that might want to say something nasty about the company. So keep that all in mind, but there is a lot of stuff outside of this article that sort of does show us that there's a consistency here. We see certain signs in the general public that sort of shows us that, yeah, this looks like it's actually happening. So let's dive into it. At first glance, Sony Group's corporation $1.2 billion acquisition of the anime streaming site Crunchyroll in 2021 looked like a success. Subscribers to the $8 a month service had tripled to 15 million since then, and the number of new shows has doubled to more than 50 every quarter. Now, let's be perfectly clear here, and they're not really kind of specifying this. It's not necessarily the fact that Crunchyroll caused them to grow how many shows. It's the anime industry itself has been booming, and thus they are producing a lot more shows. And yes, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they can find somebody overseas to license these properties. They're getting a lot of influx of money from specifically Crunchyroll and other companies, but that's not Crunchyroll's move. But the rising popularity of anime, Japanese cartoon featuring complex plot and colorful characters, has attracted competition. Netflix, Walt Disney, and Amazon Inc. are all digging their deep pockets to license shows, making it more expensive for Crunchyroll to compete and giving fans less reason to subscribe to the niche service. That is definitely their biggest problem. I don't necessarily see that for most anime fans that say, I'm going to go, subscribe to Amazon for one show in a season. Let's be perfectly clear here. I'm not sure exactly why they're saying Amazon.com right here, because Amazon itself has not really been touching anime at all. It was only here recently with Tombo that they decided to finally pick up one show. And then we had Tombo Season 2, they pick up that show. And then next season we have Ubelblot. Like, that's it. Magna Mir here this season, it's like one show a season. Internally, employee support for management and its vision has trailed down in recent months. Expensive foray into video games and e-commerce aren't going well, and the company's ambitious goal for new subscriber additions seem unlikely to be met. They state in an article, Crunchyroll declined to make any of its executives available for the story, which is based on interviews with 18 current and former employees, all of whom asked to not be identified in discussing internal matters. In an email statement, Crunchyroll said that exclusive titles, theatrical releases, events, merchandise, and games offer everything an anime enthusiast would want. I love this. One, the fact that, yes, we do have to point out that they are talking to 18 current and former employees. Again, I would assume that some cases a former employee is probably not going to be too happy with the company. And yes, the fact that they do not want to be named does sort of leave it up to trust me, bro. But again, a lot of this stuff is going to be sort of things you can corroborate with other aspects happening outside of this article itself. But yes, I don't really necessarily see Crunchyroll going, oh yeah, we want to talk about this, which does suck, but at the same time, their response is, of course, going to be, we don't want to talk about it, but look, we're great, aren't we? Since its founding in 2006, Crunchyroll has been the go-to destination for Western anime viewers. Originally a site for pirated content, the company over time licensed almost all the major anime programs from Japanese studios. It wouldn't be from the Japanese studios, by the way. It would actually be from the producers themselves. The studios don't own them. There's some studios that will technically be able to have the rights to license that out, but it's not typically the studios. Along the way, it also became a special place to work for anime lovers. Crunchyroll employees cut deals with new shows and monitor viewer data out of offices themed with characters from the programs. They enjoyed a culture where they felt heard by their bosses. In bad moments, employees joked, At least we don't work at Funimation, their main rival, which was owned by Sony. Then Sony bought Crunchyroll. Dun, dun, dun. Tension between the camps arose almost immediately. In a Zoom meeting announcing the decision, Funimation workers accused Crunchyroll of being pirates, alluding to the site's history. According to two people who were present, Crunchyroll Chief Executive Officer Colin Decker and General Manager Yuan Haig left in the ensuing months. This is where it's already getting really interesting for me in this article. It really does kind of point out that fact that, yes, Crunchyroll and Funimation were two different cultures. And I did really see that a lot with Crunchyroll itself, with a lot of the individuals that I spoke to directly during the time they were still a company separate from Funimation and Sony. There was some really good people working there. I really enjoyed my time speaking to a lot of individuals that work at the company, and they really did feel like they loved anime. It seemed like they were massive fans themselves. And yes, it did seem like as that whole buyout was happening, a lot of people were jumping ship that I knew. A lot of people were getting the hell out of there. And sure enough, when Funimation Sony bought Crunchyroll, and that merger started to happen, a lot of my conversation with individuals started to kind of dry up. A lot of the people that we're talking to were really drying up at that point. And you did see a lot of that culture kind of shifting behind the scenes. And yes, I will admit, personally, I never really had too much of a relationship with Funimation themselves. A lot of the conversations, a lot of the comments that I were seeing coming out of Funimation didn't really give me the impression that they were really a good company. A lot of those secret recordings out of the recording booths and whatnot gave me the impression that their environment was a little bit rough, a very, very rough environment. And so it doesn't shock me that, yes, when it comes time for these two companies to come together, they're going to be button heads. Now, comments like Crunchyroll used to be in a piracy site, that seems probably like it was a joke. That definitely seems like that was a joke there. I don't necessarily see that being like, oh my gosh, you're the pirate people, because honestly, at this point where Crunchyroll's at and Funimation was merging with them, that crew's gone already. Like that whole idea of Crunchyroll being the piracy site has been gone for years. It has been licensing anime for a long time now, but I could definitely see the two sides not really liking each other. Current or former employees describe Crunchyroll's new management, primarily from Funimation, as out of touch with employees and anime fans the company once prioritized. Some executives write off anime as kids' cartoons, they said, and resist hiring job candidates who describe themselves as fans. Customers weren't too happy either. Some were furious when Crunchyroll announced the digital copies of anime they had purchased through Funimation wouldn't survive the transition to the new platform. And yeah, that part still, I think at this point, is like the stupidest thing ever. I think that is totally wrong right there. But no, there's a couple things in this little paragraph that I get a kick out of. One, yes, I can see certain executives writing it off as kids' cartoons. These are probably like some really old farts that don't understand what anime is. They just know it as that my kid watches that Naruto stuff. Yeah, that's definitely like that kid stuff. Now, yeah. That's the least of this entire article. That this doesn't faze me. I've seen way too many old people. But yes, you can argue, why don't the executives of the company that run anime streaming would fail to understand what anime is for and what it is? It's not a demographic. Anime is not a demographic for kids. Anime is a medium. It is everything, all encompassing. There's shonen, there's seinen, there's shoujo. There's anime made for literally every single age group. To think that is for its kids' cartoons is, we're talking like old 90s mom mentality here. It seems extremely out of touch. I don't know necessarily that these executives would have that much control, but at the same time, there's a good chance they do. And if they think this is the way it is, they're running the wrong company. But again, I don't know. I don't know how true this one is, but if it is true, then that is extremely out of touch, and the person needs to be not in control of the streaming service. Let's be perfectly honest. Now, the part about resisting hiring job candidates that describe themselves as fans, this is probably the least of my problems here, because in a lot of cases, a lot of people they're going to be hiring in is not going to be for a job that is needing them to understand the fandom. If they're hiring somebody in to code the servers or something like that, or the programming of the website itself, they don't need to be anime fans. In a lot of cases, you're not going to really get that passion applied to the work itself. But I think that there is a lot of areas, such as the marketing itself, certain groups such as people that are doing data analysis and stuff like that, them understanding what they're working on is definitely important. I don't think that every single job position in the company should be caring about whether they're a fan or not. Actively not hiring them because of that, now we have a problem. But I don't necessarily think that just because they're anime fans that they should be opening the door to them. In a lot of cases, they don't need an anime fan for certain positions. But yes, a lot of this conflict between the two companies is definitely confirmed, at least by Emiko Iijima. For those that missed it, a while back, they had this article with Blanc. And in that article, she's the vice president of anime production at Crunchyroll. She said specifically in that article, in that interview, 2021 marks 3 years since Crunchyroll and Funimation merged. While Crunchyroll has made further leaps in the industry, we have been working hard to bridge the gap between two teams with similar but different philosophies in order to bring them together. Thanks to each member respecting our differences, understanding and executing their respective roles, we are finally able to start functioning as one team. I'm sorry, this kind of gives me an indication that all this is damn true. And again, from my perspective, as somebody that has worked with a company that got bought out and there was a lot of merging happening, yes, all this stuff happens. The companies don't like each other, and especially if they're competing companies. If you have a buyout between two companies and they're competing companies and they have to merge, they ain't gonna like each other. They've been spending the last 10 years trying to compete with them and try to get their subscribers from them. Of course they're not gonna like each other. Since the acquisition, the company has undergone at least 3 rounds of layoffs. Current employees said Crunchyroll's strategy is unclear, resulting in a climate of uncertainty and confusion. Just 39% of its workers surveyed recently said management has communicated a strategy that motivates them. According to internal poll data seen by Bloomberg, that was down from 51% in the previous poll. Another reorganization is planned in early 2025, according to 2 people who heard it is coming. I heard it was coming. In response, Crunchyroll said that its staff has grown by 27%, but wouldn't clarify since when or whether Funimation staff were counted towards that increase. Did you include Funimation staff? The company said it has over 100 open positions at offices around the world. That makes sense because they're going global and they have a lot of outreach that's happening in different countries. Crunchyroll's internal growth plan includes an initiative called 25 by 25, meaning 25 million subscribers due by the end of 2025. The goal, that's asking for it. Again, I think there is sort of, if this is true, I think there is sort of an aspect of almost not recognizing why you've had the growth you've had. And I really felt like that whole speech that was done in, I forget who it was one of the heads of Sony, was talking about the growth of Crunchyroll itself. And they fully acknowledged that moment that a lot of their growth was specifically because Demon Slayer. Guess what? You ain't got really Demon Slayer airing 24/7. You can't rely on that thing to constantly give you massive growth. They were saying specifically that show gave them massive growth in subscribers. You're not always going to have that. Stop planning for that to happen every single season. The goal, the company has said in internal documents, is to give it a large enough base of subscribers to compete for new shows with more mainstream streaming services such as Netflix and Warner Bros. Discovery Inc.'s Max. Current and former employees are concerned that mainstream streamers are closing in on Crunchyroll's territory. Shortly after Sony's acquisition, Netflix licensed JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Suddenly, one of Crunchyroll's most popular series was also available on the world's largest streaming service, and its next season was exclusive on Netflix. This is definitely huge. Now, on one end, I do want to say from a anime fan's perspective, yes, I'm going to see, but Netflix maybe has 1 show a season. At most, maybe 3 shows. It's not getting my sub over Crunchyroll where I can get, over 30 shows. But it is good to point out that the general public doesn't care about all these shows. They just care about that 1 show over here. So it does technically make sense that while that used to be a piece of the pie that Crunchyroll had exclusively, they no longer have that. There is a fear there that Crunchyroll has that they used to be able to corner this market. Now suddenly Netflix over here has this one big title and nobody's going to come over to them anymore. They'll just go to Netflix. I already have a sub with Netflix. I'm going to stay there. I don't need to sub up with Crunchyroll. That is technically an important thing, and it's something that is growing more and more every single season. With their great reach and higher license budgets, Netflix and Disney are vacuuming up hit anime titles like Delicious in Dungeon and Little Witch Academia from key Crunchyroll suppliers. Disney purchased the exclusive rights to the 2nd season of Tokyo Revengers, another popular show, last year. I don't know that was that big. I know that the first season was definitely big. That particular arc, it kind of did a little bit more rougher, especially because of the quality of the show itself. But again, it's a good example there. Delicious in Dungeon was huge. That was massively popular, so that's definitely a massive gut punch for Crunchyroll right there. Again, I don't necessarily think it's so much that they're taking a whole bunch of titles from Crunchyroll. They're just getting the big ones. They're getting the big ones, and that's where it kind of hurts Crunchyroll. According to a survey, 4,000 Americas earlier this year, an online gaming and entertainment site Polygon, 76% of Gen Z's anime fan watch shows on Netflix, compared to the 58% on Crunchyroll. This doesn't shock me. This is sort of like that whole release that Netflix themselves did. This idea that like this massive portion of their audience is watching anime. They watched maybe one episode of a show, and they got put on that list, basically. It felt like that was sort of what they were saying. Well, they watched an episode, so they're watching on our platform. We got so much anime here. Somebody watched 5 minutes of an anime show. We put them in this massive bucket here to show how much people love anime on our platform. Yes, most of these people are going to be people that don't watch anime on a regular basis, and they watch one show 1 year. And they basically are part of that percentage there. Versus an actual person that is going to subscribe to a platform where that's all they have. Netflix over here has all this other stuff, and then every now and then one of these animes hit their algorithm and they watch that. Over here, this is the anime fans that watch anime all the time, and they're always going to be subbed to Crunchyroll itself. Which, yes, to that effect is sort of Crunchyroll's biggest weakness, is that all you get with us is anime. You don't get anything else. So you're locked in. You're locked in. You have to be an anime fan for Crunchyroll. Whereas Netflix, you like entertainment in general. Producing anime normally costs around $200,000 to $300,000 per episode on average, a sum anime studios easily cover through deals with Western distributors. According to anime industry workers in Japan, due to the new competition, license fee for popular Japanese programs are going through the roof. One of those workers said, rising fees may impact the profitability of Crunchyroll. Yes, I can see the competition of Netflix, Disney / Hulu, and yes, Amazon. If Amazon's ever going to start picking up on what they're doing in the West, they're doing pretty darn good in Japan. The aspect of all these companies fighting is bumping up that license cost. And that was why I always kind of talk about the idea that there's a fear of Crunchyroll becoming a monopoly with the anime distribution in the West, because eventually what will happen is Crunchyroll will stop paying that much money because there's nobody else to grab the licenses. If Netflix gives up on anime, Disney gives up on it, Crunchyroll says we're the only one that's going to license it, so come down on that price, or we're not going to license it, and those studios are going to get a lot less money. The anime industry itself is going to start not being able to ask for as much money, and thus a lot of this injection of money that's happening into the anime industry is going to start drying up real quick. And yes, we're going to, again, like I said before, I think a lot of what we're getting out of Japan, that, 60 plus shows a season, is going to plummet. And those studios that are just popping up like crazy are going to start, shutting down really quick, which some would probably argue is a good thing. But yes, this makes sense. And I've been talking about this for a long time now. Rising fees will impact the profitability of Crunchyroll. And I think that's probably why they're making all these big deals with like Kadokawa did here recently. They made that deal with Kadokawa probably so they can get this stuff and license this stuff a lot cheaper. They're more involved with the actual production of titles coming out of Kadokawa and the anime itself. They get part of that cut basically. They basically put money in their own pocket to buy those licenses. But I've been saying this for the longest time. I made this whole video talking about, I forget which video it was. I think it was around the idea of lies that anime fans tell about the anime industry. And it was this idea that Crunchyroll itself, if you give your sub to Crunchyroll, it doesn't go to the anime industry. It does. That's why over 50% of what the anime industry is making in Japan is coming from overseas licenses, Crunchyroll. But what I was talking about in there as well was this idea that, yes, your sub can't really go to really anywhere else besides that licensing, because if you take into account how many subs Crunchyroll has and offset it by how many episodes every single month a show is airing and how much it costs them to license those, eventually they don't have the money. Toho Company and Toei Animation Company, two big anime producers, are interested in licensing to competitors with more potential to reach general audiences, according to industry staffers in Japan. I'm very curious about that. That's actually very, very interesting. That's typically not a thing, but it does make sense. If Toei Animation and Toho want to get a broader audience, they want to have that next big One Piece, that next big Dragon Ball, yes, they might want to go specifically to Netflix, even though Netflix might not give them as much money for the episodes, because they want a larger audience so it grows their IP. That actually makes a lot of sense. Netflix is streaming Toho's Beastars, for example, and that's been for a long time. So if this is the reason, no. Netflix has had Beastars from the very beginning. That's nothing new. Toho is now distributing films on its own in the US and recently bought the animation distributor G-Kids. Toho didn't respond to requests for comment. Unfortunately, it's going to happen. Toei announced last year that it will team up with Netflix to produce and distribute a new anime series for the popular franchise One Piece, after the pair collaborated on a successful live-action series that ran on Netflix. Toei, of course, declined to comment. Again, this is kind of a cool thing, and I think that was a great success. The aspect that they did that whole live action, it turned out to be as successful as it did. It seemed like the creator was super happy with it. I think that live action was like one of those rare happenings that actually just worked. And it makes sense they're going to be really happy be on board to really kind of launch something new. And I think for sure, if this all happens and it all works out well, a new reanimation of One Piece is going to be massively, massively successful for Netflix. It could technically be the thing that really drives Netflix to be the place for anime, if this turns out to be as successful as you would think it would be. Crunchyroll management figured they could hook Crunchyroll subscribers on mobile games based on favorite anime shows. One Piece Man. One Punch Man. They gotta bring up the Crunchyroll games. Oof. This is definitely not their best side right here. That's for dang sure. I was very critical of the fact that they shut down Princess Connect Redive after as much money as I put into that, as much money as so many other people did. Magia Record. There's so many of these games that if you're on the app, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, they did not like it. I got emails, by the way, when I talked about this. I made a whole video talking about Princess Connect Redive, and when they shut that down, I called it a scam. And I got emails from Crunchyroll. I got emails from, at the time, Rightstuf, who was partnered up at the time with Crunchyroll. They did not like me talking about this. But I told them, you wronged people, and I'm going to tell people about it. They didn't at the time, for at least Rightstuf's side, they didn't say, hey, take your video down. They just said, hey, they're kind of asking questions right now. But it was wrong. And I'll say it again. If you are on the App Store and anything Crunchyroll is named under an app, do not download it. Do not play it. And if you're going to, do not put money into it unless you're willing to have it go away in 2 weeks. I do not trust them at all with apps anymore. I'm still mad about Princess Connect Redive. Anyways, yes, I go through all these that people have, gone into these games. They shut them down. One Punch Man game has not been getting any updates on it since Hulu snagged the license. I don't necessarily think this is true, that Hulu picked up the license for One Punch Man and thus they decided to stop updating One Punch Man game. I think they probably are just not wanting to put any money into it. Again, this is a pattern. They've done it with every single one of their games. They've stopped updating them. They've shut them down. One Punch Man is just the next one. I don't think it has anything to do with a license with Hulu, but it could be. The company has added more than 30 titles to its Game Vault offerings. Yep, and they're all getting stored away and shut down. Executives also hope that merchandising would help retain subscribers and boost revenue. Currently, the former employees said viewers can binge on manga comic books between anime seasons instead of pausing their monthly subscription fee, collect figures of their favorite anime characters after taking over the anime merchandise retailer Rightstuf for the undisclosed sum in 2022. Crunchyroll's online store was poised to offer manga, DVDs, and toys. Yeah, that didn't go too well, did it? The business has shrunk since the acquisition, according to 3 former employees. Among the reasons, Sony asked Crunchyroll to pull the racier adult manga and toys that formed about 5% of Rightstuf's revenue. That's actually very interesting. I thought that was going to be much higher. I think that's calling it short. It's probably meaning specifically anime, H manga, specifically age-restricted stuff. There was a lot more racier stuff that was pulled from their site that I don't think was that racy. They just literally said, oh, there's a character on the front that looks a little bit too disclothed, get rid of it, even though it wasn't something that would show things. 5% I think is way cutting it short. There was a lot of people that really was buying a lot of their stuff from Rightstuf. But this right here is solidifying something I was wondering for the longest time, if this is true. I was posing the question to a lot of people that I really badly wanted to have somebody from the inside please contact me and let me know, how well is Crunchyroll Store doing? I made a whole video here recently talking about the downfall of Rightstuf anime. That yes, Sony bought Rightstuf and then had Rightstuf become basically shut down so that all that inventory goes to Crunchyroll Store. And I tried to give them a shot. I bought a big, massive order on Crunchyroll Store, And yes, it's still shipped from Grimes, Iowa, which is the warehouse that Rightstuf was. Rightstuf has always been the distributor for Crunchyroll. It's just that Crunchyroll bought them, and then now they rebranded to Crunchyroll, and they're still shipping out of the same warehouse. But things changed behind the background, because I got one massive order that like almost all of it books were destroyed. And they were destroyed in ways that were not due to shipment. They were pre-damaged. I sent it back, had them send me a new one. Hey, I want a replacement. RMA it. Send it over there. They sent me the next box. Same thing. More damaged goods. Whatever's happening, that company's failing miserably. And I've heard statements from other people. Same problem. I wondered how bad their sales are doing ever since they basically killed off Rightstuf. Take what Rightstuf was selling and take what Crunchyroll is selling and compare it to what just Crunchyroll Store is selling now. I think it's massively lower. And this is confirming it, if this is true. Over the summer, Crunchyroll laid off employees working at its video games e-commerce initiatives. One concern amongst employees and licensors in the market, overseen by Marcus Gardeman, a senior vice president. He was hired by Funimation after marketing several popular Netflix shows like Unorthodox, but had little experience with anime. He's probably one of those people that called it shows for kids. He brought in former advertising colleagues, whom Crunchyroll employees came to refer to as the boys club. I can see that. I've dealt with that with companies that I've been a part of, where they bring in some guy that's like some super awesome marketing guy from some other company, comes in and tries to change things, and he's got his boys with him. Yep, I've seen this. 7 current and former employees said that he wasn't experienced for the role, overseeing changes in strategy that cost the company money. Yep, I've dealt with that too. They don't know how one thing works. They know how this works, but they don't know how your company works. They don't know how your fandom works. That worked for that. It doesn't work for this. In the past year, he also angered both Toei and Toho, according to current and former employees. In July, for example, Toei representatives were underwhelmed at Crunchyroll's concert for the anime hit One Piece, held in San Diego Bay during Comic-Con. The signature ship from the program sailed by but wasn't lit up, so many of the attendants couldn't see it. Gardeman oversaw the event. Then in October, he sent out an email to staff, seen by Bloomberg, asking them not to promote the important Toho title, Dandadan. This is weird. The whole ship thing, yes, I can see that because fans are going to be upset. They're going to email, they're going to tweet at the company saying, my gosh, look what they did to your One Piece. I can totally see that. I can see Toei being upset about that because they're getting a lot of fans saying you messed this up. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but it is sort of a big deal, especially if that's his job. You have one job and you're messing it up. It could have been a mistake. I don't know the full details of it, so I can't really speak too much on it. But the Dandadan thing is interesting because, yes, as it says here, the quote in the email says, due to ongoing acquisition discussed, we decided not to further lean into promotion of Dandadan. And what they're kind of signifying here is that because what they're implying here is that because they could not get exclusivity, at least what this article is implying, that they're implying from the employees that shared the email, is that they're implying that because they could not get exclusivity, that Netflix had it as well, they chose to not advertise it. It's a weird one. This is a weird one because they're only shooting themselves in the foot by doing that. At the same time, from a business standpoint, I can understand that they want to not put money into advertising Dandadan because if somebody's on a website and Dandadan pops up and it says Crunchyroll in the bottom corner, they go, hey, I seen that on my front page on Netflix. Let me go watch that show. So they're basically advertising for people to just fire up their Netflix and watch the show. I don't know. It's an odd one there. But again, I do definitely see that if they don't have an exclusivity, promoting it is just benefiting Netflix in a lot of cases. That somebody is not going to subscribe to Crunchyroll to watch something that's already on the platform they're already subscribed to. Now, it being they're salty about this whole situation and thus they did this, I don't know. Like I said, he specifically says acquisition discussions. Specifically, he's talking about the idea that because we don't have an exclusivity. I can see both ways. I can see it being petty. I can see it being an aspect of them not wanting to advertise to something that could end up going to Netflix anyways, or people will go to Netflix anyways for it. It was front paging on there a lot with the top ranking and everything, so I can definitely see that. At least 2 people who work with him filed complaints of human resources about his management, one of them alleging sexist behavior, and the other accusing him of creating a hostile work environment. Sony investigated the allegations of sexism, and he was cleared. Of course. 7 people speaking to Bloomberg says that he has negatively impacted employee morale. Yeah, based on everything that else was stated earlier, I don't necessarily I can't really dispute that. Now, Japanese manga publishers such as Shogakukan and Shueisha and Kodansha are also unhappy about Crunchyroll. This is the stuff where I'm like, really? I wonder. Are very unhappy with how Crunchyroll manages their merchandising rights. Company often makes and sells merchandise or collectibles, such as figures and posters, in ways that the publisher didn't approve of, according to both Crunchyroll employees and staffers in the Japanese publishing industry. I don't know that I follow this whole part right here. I don't see this. I don't see these companies watching Crunchyroll like a hawk and saying, the way that you posted that tweet about our figure, we don't like. I would need details on this. Reports from Crunchyroll detail the sales revenue sharing purposes aren't considered trustworthy. 3 Japanese anime industry employees said the U.S. company's attitude made some heavyweight manga authors upset as their characters were used in ways they didn't want, the people said. Again, another one where I need more information on this. The revenue sharing stuff does make sense. The idea of, like, if a figure itself sells a certain amount, that they get a part of that, or it could possibly be the shows themselves. I don't know. This is too vague. But right here made some heavyweight manga authors upset as their characters were used in ways they didn't want. Again, I want to give Crunchyroll on this one. I can see this being sort of somebody feeling like they can put a character on a certain promotion, and maybe they just didn't like the coloring on it, or the character was promoting something they didn't want to promote. Again, that's another, I would have to have more information before I would kind of throw something at Crunchyroll. I think this might be one of those aspects of marketing didn't get the approval that it was supposed to get, because typically with all of these things, what they do is they have to make the art itself. So in the middle, I'll have Naruto. On the right side, I'll have a dollar sign. On the left side, it has a figure of a waifu. And then I have to send that off to the company that owns the property and say, is this use of your character okay? They look at the art and they say, yeah, the proportions are everything are good, colors look good. Yeah, you can post it. And in some cases, yes, the person might not get the approval fast enough, and they decide to post it. Or yeah, maybe they even tried to circumvent it, thinking it's not a big deal. It's just Naruto standing next to a waifu on a figure. Ha ha ha, it's great, right? And that could technically upset some people. There could be, again, like earlier, it could be also a case of some people not liking the character and how it's portrayed in an advertisement, and they again go to the source and say, "Dude, look what they're doing with your character," and they could be upset by that. Again, it's too vague. Meanwhile, Sony just announced that they increased stake in Kadokawa. We've already covered all that kind of stuff, increasing their shares so they can get more IPs and everything. Again, really fascinating article. I spent way too much time reading through this. Hope you guys enjoyed my perspective on a lot of this stuff. Again, I think a lot of this stuff it matches up. It matches up with a lot of what is kind of coming out of the industry, and I like this. I've never been the first person to kind of sit here and just scream at the top of my lungs every 2 seconds about how evil Crunchyroll is. I think Crunchyroll can be a good company. I think Sony can be a good company. I want Crunchyroll, Sony to be a good company. As much as people want it to fall, I want it to just do its job. Stream me anime. That's all I care about. Just give me the anime. Don't put your politics into it. Don't mistreat your employees. Just do your job. Be a company that distributes. But we need people like this to really dig into that company to keep it on course. Somebody has to hold it accountable. And I think this is great stuff to be happening. Again, unfortunately, nobody's named. There's no listed sources. I don't even know if they're just making all this stuff up. It seems genuine based on it kind of collaborating with a lot of things I've heard. So I can kind of see a lot of this stuff being true. But it's great stuff. Great job, Cecilia and Takashi. Definitely looking forward to your future works, but hope you guys enjoyed this run through of it. Again, definitely go check out the article for yourself. I hope you guys enjoyed my thoughts on it. But until next time, y'all take care.